All right, we are live for RTD Live Talk. Excited to be back for another live stream. And as always, it's always good to reconnect with a prior guest that always does a great job of elaborating and really breaking it down for us. So today I have a returning guest, Mr. Charles Hugh Smith. He's an author, blogger, commentator, you name it. So Charles, how are you doing?
Well, pretty good, Mike. Just locked down like a lot of other places in the country.
Yeah. And so the one of the benefits is that you're locked down in an area where the weather is pretty good year round, so you can get a good breeze through. And so I'm in Detroit, Michigan, so it's a little cold outside, so I really can't venture too far without a coat, if that. So different weather conditions for sure.
Yeah, I can't complain about steady state weather, but.
Yeah. That's good.
I know it gets hot in the Detroit area too in summer though, because that's when I was
not as much as it used to. When I was younger, we used to have those scorching hot summers, but now it's been mild, and so I mean, I guess global warming, global cooling, global something I might throw out there, but happy to have you on, and so I want to jump right into it. And as always, for those that are watching, as we're going along this discussion, feel free to ask questions directly, and we're going to open up the phone lines and have people call in just to ask questions directly. So my very first question, Charles, is right now we are at the end of March, and so I want to touch on a little bit of March and all the things that's transpired in March, and then we'll transition to April and what we think might be coming in April. So this past month, we saw 1,000-day drops in the Dow and all types of things, and then an emergency cut to zero with unlimited quantitative easing. Is that what you've always thought, like the beginning of the end, like to where we see things like this?
Well, that's a great topic, Mike, because like we're really in the moment, right? Like we're in like day-to-day volatility, as you say, and but we also have to wonder about the longer-term effects of what's going on. Like the Fed has never printed this much money this quickly, even in 2008. So we're going, well, what's that going to lead to? And so we won't know the full consequences for months, of what's going on now. But it looks like they're saving the usual suspects, which is corporate America and the banks. And I have to say, I'm amazed, like a lot of other people. The Fed's repo, their repurchase agreements, $1 trillion a day. Are you kidding me? I mean, that's like larger than most countries' entire economies,
Yeah.
So something's broken underneath the surface. So they wouldn't be needing to buy $1 trillion a day of junk from the banks.
Yeah. And what really amazes me is that, without even like going deep into it and understanding how they operate, I hear all these articles about all these lending facilities that are being created and all these windows and back doors, and they're accommodating funds to central banks to meet their obligations in dollars. And so it looks like the Federal Reserve is not only just concerned with the economy here, but also the global economy. And so, the name of the show is Rethinking the Dollar. And it's always been my belief that at some point we're going to reach a point where the dollar will no longer be respected and wanted around the world. Now, do you think activity like this will speed that up, or is there still, in your opinion, a short-term and possibly long-term demand for Federal Reserve currency?
Well, that's a great question, Mike. And, it's kind of like a head fake,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because, kind of like oil, there's definitely less cheap oil in the world. It's harder to get the oil. So, but then price is collapsing, right? Because of all the things we've read about Saudis and Russia and so on. So that's kind of a head fake. It doesn't mean oil is going to stay, $20 a barrel forever. And the same case is with the dollar. Right now, we read about a dollar shortage, right? Mm-hmm. Because a lot of foreign entities borrowed in dollars because it was cheaper than their local currency. And then now they need to get dollars and they're scrambling. And so we see the dollar going up like crazy, right? It's kind of one of those head fake things. Yeah. Over time, though, as you say, you're printing trillions of dollars and you're not distributing it into the real economy, then eventually you're going to get inflation, and that's going to eat away at the purchasing power of your currency. And not to say that there's going to be a winner in any other currency. I mean, it could very well be the Chinese yuan, the European euro. Japanese yen, all the currencies go down together.
Yeah, I do agree. So somebody mentioned here, let me put this on the screen here, from Prabar says, how does Smith see this affecting the ordinary people? So so can you go a little bit more in depth as to how these type of monetary policies, and you hinted at, eroding purchasing power, do you see this short-term stimulus, the checks that's come in, and their need to probably do a lot more of that really eat away at the purchasing power? And will there be a supply shortage that would make inflation become problematic as prices have to go up, I'm assuming? What are your thoughts?
Well, that's a good question, Mike, and I'm appreciative of the listener bringing up what the effect will be on ordinary people. And as ordinary people, we know that prices have been going up a lot for the last 15 years, right? I mean, especially in healthcare, childcare, but even in fast food. My own thing was the burrito index. Like my burrito at the taco truck used to be $2.50, and now it's $6.50. And you tell me there's no inflation?
Yeah.
And we all know that kind of stuff, and rents skyrocketing. So I think the impact is going to hurt ordinary people in a number of ways. Number one, small businesses are going to get hurt because their costs have gone up so much. It's hard for them to stay open. The rents, when you could rent a storefront for $1,000, $2,000, you could squeak by, but now it's $5,000, $6,000 for a place for a restaurant or a cafe. So that's why these guys, the owners, can only survive a few weeks without income. So I'm not sure that's going to, the $1,200 is going to save the day. But I do think the Congress did a couple of things good, which is they increased the unemployment, because unemployment's most states, it's not enough to really replace your wage, right? So they increased that. That's going to be a big plus. So I think. I don't know. I'm curious what you think. Yeah. I think the Congress is doing a little more QE for the people, finally, right? And so that will help. Higher unemployment, that $1,200. Now they may have to redo that $1,200 for another couple months. Yeah,
I did a video earlier today based upon some of the unemployment data that was projected, as the Federal Reserve mentioned that they're seeing 47 million jobs lost or something like that. And my thought was, based upon this current health crisis and this additional 30 days of no one being able to really leave out because of the social distancing, I can see all the numbers they threw out being doubled or tripled now, because if people are not working, this first round of stimulus was probably factored in as being a 1 month, or as Mnuchin said, what he said, 8 to 12 weeks worth of funds. But then that's going to take us well into the beginning of summer, where they're going to need a phase two. And then even Mnuchin slipped out the fact that they're working on another bill. And so it's like they're going to have to eventually throw that, universal basic income type of lingo in there, because it might be months before we can get back to working, nevertheless recover from all the losses. And so, I see UBI being set up probably end of summer, and it being a monthly allotment or some kind like that. What about, you think these are great grounds for the introduction of helicopter money, as we've always assumed it might be coming?
Yeah. And I think, before we started recording, you mentioned supply and demand. And so, supply shock, obviously globalization, I think in general, is going to take a big hit, right? Because everyone's wondering, well, how come all of our masks and medications are made in China? Is that really a bright idea? Yeah. Yeah. And so we can imagine that, if we're a manufacturer and we're going to try to bring some manufacturing back home to North America, that's going to cost some money, right? You're going to either have to buy new equipment, set it up, hire new managers. So costs are going to go up. And I think in the long term, though, Mike, I think it's a positive. Like globalization has not been a winner for the average person, in my view. So less globalization, more production here. Hey, more jobs, more supply chain stuff here, and safer, right? Like we're not dependent on some other country for essentials. I think that'll be a good move. In terms of UBI, I think it's obvious, because the demand side, well, if people can't afford to buy anything, then obviously that's going to destroy the economy right there.
Yeah. And I also believe that, getting back to made in America would be great, but I think we probably have a long way before we get to that point, because we have to ride this current health situation out, because I from all the information being given, all they're focusing on right now is just providing tests and providing ventilators, and the vaccine, they say, is 12 to 18 months. So if they are literally waiting on some type of solid vaccine to really, be a solution to this problem, or, something to cover it up, that's going to be next year. So I don't think we will get back to actually producing anything until all that blows over, which could be, another year or two. So we're in very interesting times that it leaves so much uncertainty, because you don't know how this is going to play out, whether, it'll get better in the summertime, or whether this is just something that's going to be seasonal, or I don't know, man.
Yeah, well, let me ask you a question it's been on my mind, which is, what's the psychology going to be for the ordinary person? Is our psychology going to change? And so we're not sure, right? I mean, we're social animals, so we're missing that sociability, and we still want to get out there as soon as we can. But on the other hand, I feel a lot of people are going to be feeling like, wow, I don't have enough savings. What if something else happens like this, or it re-emerges in fall, like people are saying? So I got to start saving money, which means cutting back on stuff. And I think that could affect the economy. People might be expecting a so-called V-shaped recovery, like a quick boost as everybody runs out and wants to, socialize and go to restaurants again and everything. But I think there's going to be a bigger urge to save money, and that's not a bad thing, right?
Yeah, and so I see that. I see that scenario playing out as well. But I think if this quarantine situation lasts, and then I don't see people consuming as much, because online shopping will be the only way they can do it. And apart from your Amazons and Walmarts, they might be the only two major corporations that's fully operational. Whereas in all the smaller grocery stores, I'd imagine, out of just sheer concern for health, a lot of people will end up dropping out of the workforce voluntarily out of concern, to where the idea of saving, as well, the idea of saving funds in the same time that they're going to be creating large amounts of reserves and accommodating all types of things, to me, it sounds dangerous. But yet I think it could prolong the life cycle of the Federal Reserve note a little bit longer, because we won't necessarily see massive amounts of inflation or lack of confidence in the currency. So I think psychologically, as time goes on, us not being able to interact with one another, I think we're going to be, a lot of people are going to lose their mind being stuck in the house, because we're so used to being able to connect with, especially with family. And so I think as this unwinds, I think when we get back to being able to interact with one another, there's still going to be that stigma of like, will this thing come back? And if someone sneezes, like I was in a store a week or two ago, somebody sneezed and everybody was like, whoa, like, off a sneeze. I'm thinking like, that's how paranoid we can become as this thing goes on, to where the new norm might be ducking and dodging a cough, a sneeze. And so, I think it's going to go crazy. And so I have a little question here, a super chat that I want to touch on. It says, hi, Mike, is the stimulus payment a one-time payment, or is it a one-going weekly, monthly payment? Joe, not Joe, Charles, do you want to touch on that? Or so as of now, it's just that one time that we're told, correct?
Right. But like you were just discussing, we're both looking ahead and going, well, look at, if this thing is crushing demand, and 30, 40 million people have lost their jobs or had their hours cut, then we're anticipating that it might become a monthly.
Yeah.
And instead of coming to Congress every 30 days and having all the pork barrel stuff, bailing out Boeing and, all these guys who basically benefited from the stock market bubble, it might be better just to pass one bill, and make it monthly until this whole thing blows over, which, as you say, could be a year, 6 months, a year. So that would be wise. Now that's you and I, that's what we believe, and we would recommend that, but it's not yet law.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's going to be the questionable part. So as always, for those that are watching, feel free to continue to ask questions, and eventually we're going to open the phone lines up, but I always got a gang of questions to ask. So I'm curious, Charles, to get your thoughts on this current scramble, what looks like a scramble for metals. And so all the online dealers, to what I've saw and what I've seen, is they no longer have supply. They have a 2 or 3 week waiting hold or whatever on metals. So do you see the shelves or an inventory coming back in to supply the demand for metals in this current environment?
Well, That's an excellent question, Mike. And I have asked, I don't have any direct contact with the wholesalers, but I've asked people who do. And I said, are they going to get it directly from the mines? I mean, exactly where is the new metal going to come from?
Yeah.
And he said, he doesn't think they know, it's like another supply chain that's totally disrupted. And of course, if the mines get shut down because somebody, one of the miners, gets the virus, tested positive, then that could put a monkey wrench in future supply as well. But I think it's don't you think it's like a positive response in the sense that people are they're making an assessment of the situation and going, wow, I need some savings that are not going to be inflated away like paper money. So therefore the rush for metals, and it's extraordinary. I mean, there's none in the whole system. That's what I've been hearing. And so that's never happened in my lifetime.
Yeah. And the biggest issue on top of that is not only is it not available, but yet there's the decoupling of the price from the physical cost of when you can find some. Like the premiums are out of this roof right now. And so one of my concerns is, as I mentioned, it's just me, put my tinfoil hat on, every now and then. I mentioned how, and possibly in April, if there is a restocking of shelves for a lot of online dealers, and I don't see the mints actually being able to meet supply right away, because as soon as they announce that they have something in inventory, I'd imagine they're going to reach an all-time high of everything, gold, silver, you name it, to where it's going to be gone like that. So I don't see them actually wanting to, announce that they're going to be opening up sales for metals, because they're going to see a demand. And my personal opinion is this next go round, if they actually are able to get some to source out to sell, that's going to be the last go round, because the mines will be shutting down, as we're hearing all around the world. And because of the health scare, I don't think the governments and central banks consider, the mines being operational right now as essential, given the fact that it's a backdoor out of the currency situation. So I see there being an issue to where this next go round might be the last little bit of supply we can actually receive in metals for as your average consumer as well. So, and that'd be spooky, because as of now, it's good to say that it might be too late if you don't have it already or already have a little some. So not sure. And so we have another question I want to throw out to you. It says, can you ask Mr. Smith to talk about the oil situation? At the end of the day, civilization requires case calories and BTU, and without oil, you have no modern civilization.
A great topic, and we touched on oil real briefly. And so again, I don't claim any expertise in oil. I follow it like a lot of other people do. I try to look at other people who are experts and read what they think. And so it's pretty clear that oil is going to get more expensive to extract, because we've already pumped all the easy stuff, right? The stuff that was under pressure, that was close to the surface. And so you got these super giant fields, right? In the Mideast, and here in the U.S., we used to have super giant fields in Texas and California. We basically depleted the easy stuff, and so that's what's happening in the North Sea and other fields. And so we can look ahead and go, well, if we're going to go down like we do in the Gulf of Mexico, we're going to go down into out in the ocean, and we're going to drill down 5,000, 10,000 feet. That's going to cost a couple $2 billion just to get the platform set up. So if you look ahead, you go, wow, oil's eventually going to cost more money, because it's going to cost the producers more to get it out of the ground. So this oil price war between the Saudis and Russia has to me, it's like a head fake. It's dropped the price of oil ridiculously low, because the demand globally has dropped like 20% overnight. Yeah. And so that may last a while, because if tourism continues to be down and people are hesitant or don't have the money, what are you going to do with all that jet fuel? Yeah. So we could see low oil prices extend for, I don't know, 6 months, 9 months, but at some point it's going to have to go up to what it costs to get it out of the ground and refine it.
Now, what about so without me knowing much, I think I had I forgot who it was I interviewed a while back, who was more knowledgeable in oil, so I got a good take from them. But to my knowledge, a lot of the operations that have been taken on has been on borrowed funds, and so if they're not producing any type of revenue off of what they're getting, what happens to all that, those bad loans that will be defaulted on because the oil price is so low? So will the Federal Reserve be in purchasing and propping up and keeping those things liquid as well, you think? Or are they already?
Good question, Mike. And what we're talking about here for the listeners is, that the U.S. Used to pump about 4 or 5 million barrels of oil a day. Like this was back when Bush was president, but 10, 12 years ago. And then this whole fracking industry and technology where they, push sand and water and they break up the rock that contains the oil, and then they get more oil than they thought there was, in the reserves, right? Because and so that's increased oil production in the U.S. by like 5 million barrels a day. I mean, we doubled our production of oil up to the same level, similar to the Saudis and Russia, about 10 million barrels a day. Mm-hmm. So that's a huge increase, and it did require a lot of capital, right? Which was borrowed, as you say. Mm-hmm. Now at $20 a barrel, it's a question mark how many of those fracking companies can actually make a profit, and the general answer seems to be basically none of them. And so they're going to have to shut down, and that's going to cut the production, and it's also going to take out a lot of high-paying jobs. That's another bad result of this.
Yeah, and as you're mentioning that, I can also see how there might be a stoppage of work because of the health situation, and I would assume that would be labeled as essential. But then again, when it comes to your health, I don't think a lot of people will show up anyway if it became a problem like that. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on the recent announcements of I'm assuming you stay in tune, but with the digital dollar. And so as a part of what the Federal Reserve, they're going to eventually roll out within that stimulus package, some type of new payment system using what they call a digital dollar, or might be called the e-dollar. Now, what are your thoughts on them rebranding the Federal Reserve note and bringing the Treasury and the Fed together and issuing that? I think it's going to be called e-dollar, because I saw about central bank digital currencies. I think they have the e-krona being sampled and the e-peso. And so there's a couple So what do you think about the e-dollar? Is that something that we're going to end up having to live with as they probably remove cash along the way?
That's a great topic, Mike. And the e-dollar, digital dollar, it's kind of like, as I understand it, kind of a competitor to cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, right? Like everyone's looking at Bitcoin going, wow, this thing's, has big demand. So let's just have a government version of it. Yeah. But of course, there's a big difference. Bitcoin, you cannot just create when you feel like it. It's only created when it's mined, which means that somebody's computer is using money and electricity to maintain the blockchain. And so that's where you get your Bitcoin. And Bitcoin only, about 21 million is all that will be created. Mm-hmm. But this e-dollar, well, what's to keep them from printing 10 trillion of it and giving it away to corporate America? I mean, so it seems like, as you say, it's kind of a shuck and jive. Like, it's how different is it from the Federal Reserve note, other than they're not going to have paper equivalents, and then without paper equivalents, then you get rid of the informal economy, and that raises a lot of issues, which I'm sure you've covered in depth, right? Like, therefore you can't pay in cash, then you can't have any kind of informal economy, which is a big part of life in rural America, or people that can't make a lot of money in the formal economy, then they can make money in the informal economy. So I would say getting rid of cash is a very bad thing.
Yeah, and I think that within the next couple of months, they're going to use the health scare on top of it to say that it's carrier of this virus and the cash ban. And so I see all this working out quite well, according to what I think was already part of the plan anyway. So it's just amazing. I never imagined a pandemic or a health situation like this coming about. I thought it was always going to be war, but now I guess we're in a war, but against an invisible enemy, as Trump loves to mention. And so it's interesting that, I guess we still are at war, huh?
Well, Mike, speaking of this whole of the pandemic, I read a lot of things, and I'm sure you have too. So I'm curious your opinion of it. Is this one of those "don't let a crisis go to waste" things?
Yeah,
so that, in other words, they're going to jack up surveillance. They're going to take away civil liberties. They're going to get rid of paper money. They're going to do everything they dreamed of.
Yeah, and so all these very same topics. I did a video the other day about having a national tracking system to keep tabs of everybody, and it'll be easy. It'll be convenient to put people in that database if they're this health scare. If they test positive, it'll be easier to put them in there to give or take their survival of the situation. But it'll be easier to roll out all types of things that will restrict us from having an opportunity to choose, because right now everything is labeled national emergency. So everything's been done for our best interests, supposedly. But yet, like with the prior event we had 20 years ago with 9/11, whenever stuff is rolled out, it's never rolled back in. So whatever they're going to bring out now in the name of fighting this invisible enemy, we might have to live with from here on out. And that's the scary part, because right now we're at their mercy because we're forced to stay in the house and just, talk via internet. So it's quite scary. But I want to comment, and I'm curious to get your thoughts, because someone in the chat referenced that JM Bullion has plenty of poor man's gold. It's not a silver shortage. Silver holders will say anything to pump the price of silver. And so I want to just actually show this, because one of my concerns is not necessarily that there's a shortage of silver, but it's going to be if it's affordable. And so right here at the very top, it mentions that, it's a 15 plus business days is the time frame that you can expect your delivery. But then it's like we also have a temporary hold on orders of $299 at a minimum dollar. So unless you're going to spend more than $300, you won't actually be able to acquire this metal right away. But not everybody is able to do that. So it's still a scarcity in the fact that they're restricting how it can be purchased, as opposed to just being able to buy one or two coins. So, it's one of the things where we'll see how much long that lasts. But I think after this 15-day window or however long, it may not be as easy to source, in my personal opinion. So I just wanted to comment on that from the person watching.
Right. And, let's talk a little bit about the volatility in precious metals, which, hey, I confess, I'm surprised as heck that, gold dropped $150 and they slammed silver from like 14 to 11.
Yeah.
And people ask me, well, why did this happen? And, one of the theories out there is that a lot of people, big players in the financial markets, they're too heavily indebted, right? They have basically margin calls and they got to raise cash. And so they're selling their precious metals because the value is still high, where the stocks that they gambled on might have fallen a third or, 40%. So they're rather than sell that stuff, which has lost so much of its value, they're unloading their precious metals. And so that may be one reason why we got this, but I don't know. Do you have any insight into why the volatility has been so high in gold and silver?
So from what I've gathered from watching a variety of other commentators is just the issues in the paper market, like the fact that demand is high and the LBMA is not able to, or the COMEX is not able to really source. And there's more people now wanting physical at the same time that the price and all the demand and attention is on gold. And so they're running low on actual physical, being able to deliver and fulfill some of those contracts. So according to what I'm reading or whatever, they're trying to source it from the LBMA and changing the game, changing the rules of the game on how they can deliver, whether it's the 100 bars or the 400 ounce bars. And they have to, try to basically at the last minute now scramble to just shuffle the deck a little bit to make it look like, the gold is there and it's going to be able to be delivered. And that's going to be an issue, because from what I'm also reading about Europe, I mean, everybody's cracking down on letting their gold go. Everybody who has claims to it, they now want the physical. So that might lead into more of a panic to where, I can see smaller bullion dealers or whatnot holding back a little as well, because at this current price, it costs more to come out the ground than you actually paying for it now to hold it on top of apart from adding a premium. So I think it's gonna be issues, man. And that's why I think this right now, if you can find it, right now might be your best time. And so let me ask you a question. As far as this stimulus is coming, and I share my opinion, but I'm curious to get yours, as they're going to be printing or increasing the reserves digitally as well as eventually paper, but sending it out to citizens, eventually it's going to become a problem with too much currency. Now, as far as in your opinion, how would you allocate some of those funds? Like, knowing that, if you get a monthly check outside of your needs or whatever, would you be looking to diversify into or save or to buy tangible goods and services that would appreciate over time? What are some things that you might consider doing if you were in that situation?
Right. Well, this is
so I'm sorry.
No, not at all. Well, this is really the core of one of the core topics of your site and show. Mike, is like, how do we adapt? How do we get ahead of the curve on this inflation, which we know is coming, because every central bank and government is printing money like crazy. And the general theory here is if you create a bunch of extra money and you don't create goods and services in the real economy, then you're going to get inflation, because all that new money is going to be chasing the same pool of goods and services. Mm-hmm. And, I was just reading this book called 1493 about how the discovery of the New World changed the economies in China and Europe. Mm-hmm. And there was inflation even when they used silver, because the Spanish discovered so much silver mm-hmm. that the money supply tripled, and they got hyperinflation even using silver. So it just goes to show, if you're going to increase your money supply and you're not creating any more goods and services, you're going to get inflation. So what do? Okay, well, precious metals, and I'm a fan of Bitcoin. It's super volatile. It's not something that you want to gamble on, I think. But if you wanted to put a little bit of your savings in a cryptocurrency, that could be a hedge against inflation. Mm-hmm. And then I'd say starting a micro business. You know what I mean? What can you trade in terms of your labor or expertise or skills that you got your own little network of creating value for your friends and family and other people doing, some kind of enterprise. And so, because that's what I call controlling your own capital. Like I'm not a big fan of like putting my money in a mutual fund, which is some, 25-year-old gambler. Yeah. I'd rather control my own capital, and that includes my labor, right?
Yeah. Good point there. So I'm curious to get your thoughts. We're going to get ready to wind down pretty soon. So I'm curious to get your thoughts of as the whole planet is facing this current issue. And so we were told it originated in China, and we've heard stories about their numbers. So no one really believes their numbers, but do you think this entire health situation on top with the financial meltdown underneath, is this a part of that global reset that we've all mentioned or thought is coming? Are we on a pathway to, when this blows over, being in a completely under a different monetary system, in your opinion?
Great. Love that question, Mike. I think that's exactly where my focus is, because I would kind of try to summarize it like this. The two biggest drivers of our lives and our economy in the last 20 years has been globalization and financialization, turning everything into some asset that can be sold, commoditized, meaning it can be sold anywhere. So you got subprime mortgages in the US that were sold to some, pension fund in Norway or whatever, So those two things were starting to erode before this hit. Mm-hmm. Global trade was kind of slowing down, and financialization was no longer really, it was breaking down, which is why the Fed had to start its repo thing in September. So these two big trends that were controlling our lives for the last 20 years, dominating it, mm-hmm. they were already kind of topping out and rolling over. And so now the coronavirus has just kind of kicked this kind of crumbling shack. Mm-hmm. Yeah. and so it just needed some kind of trigger, and who knows what it might have been, but in this case, it's the virus, the pandemic. And so, but I think we have to look at the structural flaws in those things, and that's why we're going to end up with a different monetary system. Is those globalization and financialization, when they go into retreat or reverse, like the tides have shifted, mm-hmm. then bailing out corporate America and the banks is no longer going to work. That's not going to help the real economy, and the general public is going to rebel against that whole mentality, and printing money and giving it to the financial elites. That's not going to win any elections anymore, I think. So we're going to end up with a different political system, I think a different understanding and a different economy, and eventually a different monetary system for sure.
Interesting. Wow. Well, Charles Hugh Smith, as always, I want to respect, it's still early for you. And so I want to respect the rest of your day. So I appreciate you as always joining me here on Rethinking the Dollar, because you do a great job of laying it out. And man, I thank you for taking time to join us here. Any last thoughts did you want to leave us with? And I'll actually point people back to your blog so they can get a chance to see your work. So any last thoughts you want to leave us with here before we dial back and just say good evening or good day or good night for me, good morning for you. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, Mike, I appreciate that. I think it's gonna. I wrote recently about the new frugality, and I think that we've been kind of like free spending. Borrow and spend. The tide was running like, everybody's getting more prosperous, and now we might be in a situation where there's going to be less borrowing and less spending, and so I think frugality is gonna come back into fashion.
Yeah.
And control your own capital. Do the best you can with what you have, and save and invest instead of spend.
Save and invest. And I hear you. All right. Well, Charles, it's been great once again. I appreciate everybody taking time to join us and to share your thoughts in the chat and go back and forth. I see a lot of gold and silver comments in the chat and people talking about prices and stuff like that. So not a gang of questions today, but hope to have you on, in the weeks or months ahead, and when your schedule is available, and have you on and see where we're at then and get your thoughts. So once again, Charles, it's been great hanging out, and thanks for joining me on RTD. Be blessed.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mike.
My pleasure.
My pleasure.